Welcome to Preps Insider. I'm Jim Leo with BATV, and I'm joined once again by Jay Schwab and Kevin Druley of the Kane County Chronicle. And guys, we're well into the high school hoops season now, approaching the Christmas tournament season too. Jay, tell us a little bit about what you think of some of the teams in the area. Not really one that jumps to the head of the pack right now.
Yeah, there hasn't really been a team that's kind of stepped on the gas right at the start of the season and separated itself, at least in the Tri-Cities. You kind of thought maybe St. Charles North would be that team this year, and they haven't peaked early, which I guess is a good thing. That I still think that ultimately they're the team that projects to have the best season, but they've started a little slow, starting at the East Tournament, and then lost a ball game at South Elgin the other day. That's the kind of opponent that they'd like to think that they can beat with some consistency. So they're still tinkering and still some work to be done for the North Stars. Other teams have had some good moments too. Batavia's looked pretty sharp lately. I think it's going to be a somewhat similar scenario to last year in that their front court is very good as it was last year, and it's going to come down, I think, for the Bulldogs to how consistent their guard play is. Jesse Coffey shot the ball really well lately. If he can stay hot from the perimeter, that certainly bodes well. Then they've got a sophomore point guard, Roofer, who is, from my standpoint, maybe the biggest key to their season in terms of how well he can run the point and keep them settled and get them into their offense against some of the better teams they play. Geneva can make other teams look really bad at times with their defense. They held 2 straight teams to under 30 points, but on the flip side, Geneva themselves can, when their offense isn't clicking, they can look a little bit nasty too here and there. So I think the Vikings have to develop some leadership to maybe get themselves through some of the rough patches when things aren't clicking, to keep from falling into an abyss and kind of keep things steady when they don't have a hot shooting night. And then St. Charles East also, at that same East tournament, started the season 0-4, and they've picked up a couple wins since then. I think they are more talented than they've been the last couple of years, but slow start for the Saints.
So maybe some old-time basketball scores for the Geneva Vikings this year, maybe to come here. Geneva's girls team, of course, was head and shoulders better than any team in the area, but things have changed a bit.
Yeah, still certainly a good team, a solid team, a winning team. I mean, they are 6-3 going into this week, but you know, you say and an actual number at the end of their one-loss record, which we haven't done the last 2 years. They'd won 57 regular season games in a row. Started off 3-0 this year, and then had that first loss in the tournament final to Montini, and then have also lost the league game to St. Charles North, and went downstate and lost to Springfield this past weekend. So a little bit of vulnerability there. Have some of the names that we know about and know well, and Ashley Santos and Kat Yell and Sammy Schofield, some real solid play at the guard position and running the floor and pressing and doing the things that we've heard about Geneva doing the past few years. But really the post game is what needs to be kind of buttered up and amped up a little bit. They lost Kelsey Augustine and Lauren Wazinski, the longtime starters, down low, and still trying to kind of work in some depth. They've got Caitlin Allen, who's kind of been roaming around the court and playing everywhere, but mostly down low. But just really right now kind of working on getting some more solid play, at forward and at center. So, it's young, and, you'd like to beat everybody and go into the postseason undefeated, but I guess ultimately, as long as you're winning and, the wheels aren't falling off, it's, you kind of test your yarn and know what you got to do. So really think Geneva will kind of right the ship and move forward, but certainly in the early season. And, they do have a challenging schedule going forward and some tournament and shootout games coming up too. But, I think they'll kind of right the ship, as far as that's concerned. With other teams, we mentioned St. Charles North beating them, and North has been a good bunch. It's just a matter of kind of getting some consistency there. They've got some star seniors coming back that have really provided a lot of scoring and defense, but just, kind of night to night. Sometimes they're scoring in bunches and others they're not. Kind of another early season note, Kalen last year won only 5 games. They've already eclipsed that. Been in a handful of games that they've either lost at the buzzer or in overtime, but the goal going into the year was really to be overall more competitive, and they've met that so far. And they'll get into league play in a new conference and look to be more competitive there too. So they're looking for big things this year as well with a lot of seniors.
Well, for both the boys and the girls, Christmas tournament time is so pivotal for seasons. I mean, it can make or break you in a lot of different ways. And if you get off to a slow start, you can kind of right the ship come holiday tournament time and use that as a catapult to some better play in January and February. What are some of the tournaments coming up that some of the local teams will be involved in?
Well, we've got a big stack of papers here that we could go on for quite a while with just the volume of tournament games. A couple tournaments that I think bear watching on the boys' side. I guess you have to start with Kaneland. They are defending tournament champion out at Plano last year. That is a little bit certainly of a smaller school tournament, so the level of competition is not dynamite there. I think Kaneland would acknowledge that, but still, to experience tournament play just in terms of looking ahead toward March is a good thing to experience success and having to bounce back and prepare for different opponents quickly and that kind of thing. So Kaneland started the year pretty well despite not getting their football guys in for quite a while and starting 2 freshmen. So the Knights certainly would have to be considered a pretty serious threat at Plano again. And then St. Charles North has been in bridesmaid mode for several years at that Jacobs Holiday tournament where they've had success but not been able to knock down the door and win the thing. And as we touched on earlier, this is a North team that expects to be awfully good this season and doesn't really have a ton on their resume yet. So I think they're going to be especially hungry to perform well at Jacobs. And I know that they'd love to finally be celebrating at the end instead of consoling themselves with, second place is pretty good.
Now, St. Charles East is at the York tournament. York is one of the premier Christmas tournaments year in and year out, it seems like. Do you expect them to make any headway with that type of field that they're going to be up against?
They're going to have to raise their game quite a bit to do it. They start off with Maine South there and some very good teams in that field, Downers Grove South and York, and that is a very difficult tournament, and East is going to have to play a little bit better than it has so far if it's going to avoid a consolation-heavy experience there.
How about on the girls' side? I mean, Geneva's Christmas tournament situation, what does that look like? Do you think they'll be able to take home a tournament crown over the holidays?
Yeah, they've certainly had past success the past 2 years at Naperville North Bennett. We mentioned the regular season streak, so just do the math. That means they didn't lose at all in those tournaments, so they're coming off 2 straight titles in that one. So, they're really near or at the top of the class in the field this year. Right off the bat, they're going to get challenged, though, with Wheaton Warrenville South, which is off to a pretty solid start itself and has a lot of young players who have kind of developed early and are really contributing to their success. There's also in that field some other teams that can really challenge them. Bennett, the host team, is a solid guard-oriented team, so you can maybe see just a punch-for-punch, high-scoring game if both teams are unable to cover kind of the fast-breaking stuff. But really, with Geneva, they bring back players who have been in that tournament, excelled before. So I think they're, if not a heavy favorite, at least a favorite to three-peat at that tournament. But it is going to be, I think, more challenging than it's been in years past. A lot of other tournaments, not that teams wouldn't have a chance, but I mean they're not as much the favorite as Geneva is at this tournament. Kind of a case in point is Wheaton North, where St. Charles East goes, and East is a real young team, and just kind of, some nights they're not having it, but on another night they gave North, which beat Geneva, a run for its money. So just kind of wondering, what they're about. But I mean they'll play teams, like Hersey, like Waubonsie Valley, who are real strong teams and projected to go far in the postseason, and they'll want to keep up, and this is kind of that classic thing of how much you can gain from a game like that, and what you learn and what you pick up from that strong of an opponent. But yeah, I'd say look for Geneva to be back and making a run at that again at Naperville North and Bennett.
Well, we've talked about some of the teams, but what about the individual performances from some of the players in the area? I know the one that jumped out at me was Ryan Boatwright and his offensive displays so far this year with East Aurora, but what about other players in the area?
Yeah, I think Kyle Nelson, a big guy, junior at St. Charles North, has made a nice impression. Coach Poulin thought that he was going to take a pretty big step this year, and that has held true. He's had a lot of games where he's been flirting with the double-double, scoring 20-plus points. So I still think North's at its best when Josh Mikas, a senior and real experienced player, is real aggressive. It's kind of one of those cases where they have a lot of good players, so it's sometimes, okay, who's going to take charge when? And I think that for North to really meet its potential, Micus is going to have to want to take some ownership of that team day in, day out and let the other guys kind of play off him a little bit. But Nelson is a great option in the post for them. Eddie Grahovic at Marmion hit 10 threes the other night against Chicago Christian, so that's an electrifying shooting display. Yeah. So certainly have to give that young man. You don't want to go zone against Marmion, or if you do, you better make sure you find him in that, within that zone. And one of Canelan's freshmen, Daniel Helm, is their second leading scorer already as a freshman. He played football at the varsity level, and now he's showing that he might be even better in basketball, but certainly a very talented, versatile athlete for Canelan. So there's, we could go on. I guess one other guy I'd want to mention is Cole Gardner with Batavia. Last year, he earned my respect as a sophomore when he was willing to really physically mixed up with Jordan Treloff, DeKalb 6'10" senior, who's now a D1 player at Illinois State. And as a sophomore, I thought it was pretty brazen that he was not afraid at all to kind of irritate Treloff and really give him some, make him earn his production against Batavia. And he has taken that next step forward as a junior, and kind of gets the ball and has a head of steam that he's not going to waste any time. He's going to go to the rim. And he's had a lot of success along with Elliott Vaughn in the post for Batavia. So Gardner's another guy that's catching my eye early on here.
Kevin, how about on the girls' side? Any girls in particular that have really stood out to you in terms of their performance these first few games?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of the usual suspects. Kat Yell's been off to another hot start. Mentioned the Springfield game earlier in the show, and she had 25 points in that game, and certainly wanted the 26th and the 27th. She had a 5-foot runner in the closing seconds that kind of just bounced and rimmed out and was really close to putting them on top in a 1-point loss. But she's been doing what she's done the past several years that we're accustomed to. Alongside her, Ashley Santos is starting to heat up with some big scoring games and just kind of being a 1-2 punch there in the offense. St. Charles North has the senior play we talked about. Tess Fisher had a real strong shooting game the other afternoon at South Elgin, and They get their points any way they can, but St. Charles North can really shoot free throws. They were 15 for 15 in the East game, and then South Elgin game they missed just a handful in about 25, 30 attempts. So they can get their points either shooting it from the field or from the line. Kind of some newcomers. Kelly Evers at Canelan has had some strong games in the post, and they are senior oriented, but she's a junior and got a lot of minutes last year as a sophomore, and kind of that teeth gnashing 5-23 year, but she did get some experience going up against some pretty good post players in the old Western Sun. Wheaton Academy, there's a player, Allie Witt, who she was the leading scorer on the sophomore team last year. More kind of known around the halls as a soccer standout, but she's really come in as a guard on the varsity now with Wheaton Academy and been leading them in scoring a lot of nights, and pretty good outside shooter and can slash to the basket when need be. So, kind of some newcomers, like we say, to go with the ones that we're used to talking about, but certainly it seems like every team, has an option there, and there's some developing freshmen as well at Batavia. We've got Liza Fruant, who's come in for Sammy Villarreal, who's kind of nursing a hamstring. So, once they get Sammy healthy, which they're hoping to do, I know Coach DeBrucker likes their chances as kind of a 1-2 tandem in the front court, or the back court rather. But so that's kind of what we're looking at with them right there.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see how these holiday tournaments shake out, and of course a lot more individual performances as well on the way. Certainly, guys, thanks so much for your insights. And for Kevin Druley and Jay Schwab, I'm Jim Leo with BATV signing off with another edition of the Preps Insider.